Thank you so much, Emily, for that extraordinary presentation of the outcome document. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I will ask your indulgence for the next 10, 12, maximum 15 minutes to round up the conversation around making it happen. The time is now or never. Moving from ambition to action. And I would like to call back onto the stage Mr. Ralph Tendai Mupita, Mr. Ralph Mupita, who's the MTN Group President and CEO. I would like to bring back to the stage the Chief Executive Officer of the Ethiopian Airlines, Mesfin Tasu. And last but definitely not the least, I would like to bring back the Chair, Africa America Institute, Crystal Jackson, to wrap up the conversation on their thoughts of how we are moving from ambition to action. And also, if I may bring to the stage the Deputy Trade Minister of South Africa, Deputy Fakile Majola, to join us as well. Good. Thank you very much for joining this panel. So we placed this conversation at the end because even though our wonderful Emily has given us the outcome document, it is imperative that we move and we use the words to move from ambition to action, which is most likely one of the most complicated things to do. So in no particular order, I think I'm going to start off with you, Ralph, because you're right next to me. Kate did mention something pivotal. We have a lot of conversations, we have a lot of dialogues. What do you see being the one major hindrance to our moving from action to ambition in a speedy manner, and how should we deal with that hindrance?
Thank you very much, and all protocol observed. You asked for 1 point, and maybe if you can give me the luxury of 2. I think the first one is to take a nationalistic view as opposed to a Pan-African view. There are always going to be challenges in each and every country, and at any particular point in time, there will be differences. But if we do take a nationalistic as opposed to Pan-African view to some of these issues, we won't move forward. I would put that as the first point. The second point is the point I made in my remarks earlier on, is that we need to build a higher level of trust between business, government, and broader civil society, that we need to move in the same direction. There has been historically incidents that have created this mistrust, but we need to move beyond them. But obviously trust is built through action and evidence, and from the private sector, I would argue that there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And those two things, the much more Pan-African view, building trust, enables us to move from ambition to action much more quickly.
Thank you very much, Ralph. Ms. View, whether we like it or not, I use Ethiopian Airlines as a clear symbol of what commercializing a nationality looks like. Now, the argument always is that if we want to be able to trade across our countries, then, for example, moving from Accra to, I don't know, Kigali should be facilitated, should be easier. What do you need from that airline perspective to facilitate the movement from one country to the other? And essentially, what must we also as consumers understand about difficulties that you may have?
Yeah, I was focusing on the airline industry in my presentation. And Ethiopian Airlines has been serving the African continent by expanding its network with daily and multiple frequencies to several of the cities, carrying both passengers and cargo. Through this action, we have been promoting trade, tourism, and investment in Africa. And we will continue doing the same by partnering with other airlines in other countries. We believe that African Airlines has to cooperate. We have to work in support of the African Free Trade Area initiatives. And we are committed with a Pan-African vision to realize this. But we truly need the support of African governments to fully understand the strategic nature of airlines. If you are a billionaire and if you want to become a millionaire, you invest in airlines. The airline business doesn't generate profit to its owners. Instead, it is an engine of development. It is a catalyst for economic development of countries and the continent. Governments need to understand this, that it is a strategic business unit. It's not like a small business that creates profit. So it needs to be supported, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of liberalization of the market, in terms of making the tax very reasonable. The airline industry has to pay tax, no doubt. But let us make it reasonable so that it serves the very basic purpose of developing the continent. That is what we are asking. Thank you.
Crystal, one of the things that I do know that sits at the core of his heart, when I say his heart, I mean His Excellency the President of the Republic of Ghana. One of the things that sits at the core of his being is the return of our brothers and sisters from the diaspora. So clearly, at the top of our agenda is the diaspora socioeconomic inclusion. But at this point of Africa fast-tracking its ambition to action, at this point of us wanting to support ourselves country to country, at this point of us wanting to give the AfCFTA all the necessary support it needs, what role does the diaspora play in this? Let's talk about opportunities. Let's talk about investment. Let's talk about nation building, so to speak. What do you see as the role of the diaspora in this action?
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great question. It's central to it, to achieving the mission. I think there are two things. First, I want to talk about the work AAI is currently doing in Detroit with school children, helping them see themselves outside of the story of Africa, but not through the lens of European domination. So I think it's very important that we retell the story, the correct story, the full story. So I think that's one. I think there's a great opportunity when we connect the diaspora for us to understand the power that we have to transform the economy away from that lens. And I think it's, again, like I said earlier, I think it's through direct investment. I think it's breaking down barriers to access. So once we have more access to each other, then I think we can do more to sort of accelerate what we know can and should be possible for the continent.
Thank you very much. Honorable Minister Fakile, I'm going to put you on the spot and talk about policy. Talk about the kind of policies that would be required to fast-track the actions or the achievements of the AfCFTA. Because as far as we're concerned, it is going to be one of the biggest advantages to the continent of Africa. So from country to country, what are the unified policies that are required to provide assistance to the AfCFTA to achieve its mandate in a short possible time?
In a short possible time is the key word. I'm not allowed to say all protocol observed. I'm a government official, so I've got to acknowledge the presence of our president of Ghana, President Akufo-Addo, the former president of Niger, and our outstanding champion of the AfCFTA, the former Prime Minister of Guinea, our Secretary General, ministers. Ladies and gentlemen, so let me come to your question about policy. Firstly, Honorable President, I've been sitting in the session since yesterday. I must say that I'm very excited about what has come out of this. The choice of theme is very important. That's why you underline the term, in the shortest time possible. from ambition to action. So when my sister left the floor, there was applause there because she underlined something. Can Africa stop talking? We know what needs to be done. Can we get down to the business of getting things done? So I would like to appeal most importantly to our leaders across the continent, our presidents, to take us on in this journey. We have identified key issues on infrastructure, on technology, on skills, and my sister spoke very important about issues of security that we've got to tackle across the continent. This instrument, there's nothing in my time that I have come to understand as and most important instrument that will give birth to the vision that our forebears have had of the unification and integration of the African continent. I think it is the best instrument that we have, so we've got to ensure that we can move with speed with the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area and can attend to all the issues that the panelists here put up on infrastructure, water infrastructure, rail infrastructure, roads infrastructure, technology and innovation, and the rest of the things. They have been identified. Our leaders must now guide us, including us, whipping us into line as ministers to ensure that we can get down to the business of doing things. So we all agree here. Dr. Adesina inspires me with this. Says we have a very low ambition as Africans, that we say we want to feed Africa. He says, in fact, our ambition must be to feed the world because we have the capacity to. Can we get down to the business of getting things done? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. So I suppose what you're saying is the next time we meet, it should be Africa Prosperity Action and not Africa Prosperity Dialogues, because we're going to move from talking to the actual to the action, and I do agree with that. I promised the audience 15 minutes. I have approximately 2 minutes to go. So I'm going to give each one of you perhaps one major call to action, not necessarily from the industry that you represent, but perhaps from the perspective of an African who is invested in Africa and for whom this theme today and the last 3 days means the world to. Ralph, if I may start off with you, your call to action to not just the women and men in this room, but also to the world as we're beaming around the world, as it were.
Thank you. I mean, I think we must put the youth at the center of our actions. The youth are the future. I would go forward and say that providing the digital infrastructure and the digital skills is what can take Africa not just to catch up, but to actually catapult above the rest of the world.
I'm going to ask each of you to also use this opportunity to create your own call to action. Honorable Fakile, we'll start off with you. We'll continue with you.
3 issues: infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure for the African continent.
Thank you very much. Crystal.
Return home. If you're African American, Africa is your home. Return home.
And last, definitely not the least, Mesfin.
As I said earlier, all we need is support from the governments. The governments need to understand what air transport industry is, and that is all. But when it comes to Ethiopian Airlines, we fully support the initiative of the African Free Trade Area initiatives, and we are growing. We would like to continue supporting the free movement of people and goods to bring or to make our own contribution to African prosperity.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the time that I requested from you, and I want to say please do give a round of applause to the MTN Group President and CEO, Mr. Ralph Mupita. We also have the Chief Executive Officer of the Ethiopian Airlines, of course, Mesfin Tasu. We have the Chair, Africa America Institute, Crystal Jackson, and definitely last but not the least, we've got the Honorable Deputy Minister of Trade from South Africa, the Honorable Fakile. Thank you so much for being my audience and for wrapping this up. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll now hand over to my colleague, Prince, to take it over from